Welcome. Thanks for tuning in.
Zanna.
Miranda.
Today we talk about the top 5 COO benefits and behaviors for successful CX transformation. And it's one in a series, right?
Yes.
So let's start with why the series and why COO.
Yes. And I think it's actually the last one in the series, if I'm correct. So we've already had, let's do it from the top of my head, right? The CEO, CFO, CHRO, and the CI/CT/CDO.
Yes.
The IT and digital again. And now the Chief Operations Officer. And sometimes Chief Operations also can be linked a bit to Chief Commercial Officer, right? They also tend to have sometimes like large call centers or the stores in their responsibility. But yeah, why? Why? Because for two reasons. It's for the C-level listening, thinking, hey, I want to make sure that CX transformation in our organization is successful. What can I do? Right? I'm already convinced, but how can I help? Also for the C-level that's maybe not so convinced, okay, but how is CX transformation actually contributing to my goals, right? My business challenges. And for a CX leader, CX professionals who need some additional ammunition to convince their C-level, and in this case, the Chief Operations Officer.
Yeah, all right. So let's start with the benefits or challenges, right? Number 1, operational efficiency.
Yes, of course, one of the core, let's say, responsibilities of the Chief Operations Officer is operations, right? Which is already pretty quickly linked to efficiency, right? Make sure that operations run super smoothly. And when I was preparing, I found, so I also was looking into, okay, what are sort of the key KPIs that a Chief Operations Officer is responsible for? And I found the labor utilization rate. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like, using people, human resources, that's also such a name, right?
Yeah.
So I already thought, okay, let's make that at least, like the labor impact rate, right? What is the impact that I'm making as an employee on customers?
I like that one.
But my reasoning, so how I found it was because one of the first thoughts that came to my mind is that indeed once you really use the customer and the data to understand, okay, where's the most value added for employees, then you can reduce unnecessary time, or let's say less valuable time for employees, and then you free up time for them to make more impact or utilize them more efficiently, which we'll explain when we get to the behaviors. And the most obvious links are in reducing costs. And reducing cost is on 2 levels. One is by, if you're running a large contact center, if that's part of your operations, or the stores, then understanding, okay, what are unnecessary calls or what are unnecessary moments for customers to come to the store. And that's always what we call the first time right metric, where you ask your customers, hey, dear customer, do you think we could have prevented this call, this visit, this email? And then between 30 and 40% said, yes. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's a lot, right?
That's a lot, right? That's a lot of operational efficiency that you can gain while making more time available for employees to spend it on more value-adding activities.
And make the customer happy because he doesn't have to call for something that he thinks is unnecessary, right?
Exactly, or that's broken, or that he prefers to do online, he or she.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a win-win, right? We reduced the cost by 25% while making customers happier, right? While enhancing the satisfaction. Yeah, a lot of win-win there. And the other tool is around journeys, right? So often, again, let's say if a call center is a large part of your operations, then often you are not the one that's causing these calls, right? The cause of the calls is because, I don't know, the website is not functioning, or maybe there's a letter that's not clear, or, there are, let's say, non-call center related causes in other departments, right? The back office is sending a super unclear letter, the financial department is making a mistake. And to prevent you from looking too operational into your own responsibility, your own silo, that's where journeys are super valuable. And to really understand, okay, if you look at let's say I'm becoming a new customer and need to pay the first invoice, looking at all the steps in the journey, you will automatically look at all the different departments and their role in the journey. So I think I was going to say maybe from all the roles, journeys is the more beneficial for a COO. but I think we also covered a lot of benefits for the other C-level.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2, collaboration across departments. It's also linked to the journey, right?
Definitely, yeah. So it's two things, right? It's, of course, I need to manage different departments because companies are organized around silos for efficiency. And you can debate whether that's nowadays really the most efficient. But also the challenges that you then get is that, for example, you get conflicting interests or even conflicting KPIs. For example, if, let's say, the sales department is just being steered on get as much sales in the short term as possible, while you also want to ensure that you enhance retention. If sales is just going to send out like super high discounts, then they will get their KPIs. But you're attracting a crowd that at the end of year 1 is going to look around and look for the next, discount.
Yeah.
So also here, right, make sure that not only you collaborate across departments, but definitely also align on making sure that, yes, you might still have departmental KPIs, but that all the KPIs are adding up to either one journey or one common goal, instead of them being in conflict. And one of the other topics is, of course, I think one of the key interesting parts of the COO is that, of course, there are a lot of ideas coming from marketing, coming from strategy. And within the COO, they need to translate that into daily operations and daily work of employees, right? So no more nice blah blah vision, but okay, how is it actually going to work? And then if you want to start trying new things, it tends to be a challenge to also inspire and get, let's say, the middle management layer or the team leaders excited. And I think that's also a bridge to one of the behaviors. I think you can play a very good role in helping them understand the why behind things. And also just, I didn't put that on the list of behaviors, but I'm just going to throw it in there. Have some compassion, right? So I think 99% of companies are still working in this super KPI driven, let's say almost factory style organization system. And then if you're going to ask them to experiment, to trust their employees, that's a very different way of looking at it, right? It's almost a 180-degree switch. So give it time, right? Don't say, my employees are not customer-centric or the team manager doesn't get it. No, right? It needs time for them to really digest this new way of working.
Yeah, nice one. All right. So the number 3 benefit, continuous improvements.
Yeah, of course, if you're responsible for the operations, you want to keep improving, learning, how can we get better? We've had Agile, we had Scrum. I think the most recent new hype is called SAFe, which builds again on Agile. Right, so I think as a CEO, you've seen all these ideas come and go, and the essence, of course, is always the same, right? How can you make sure that you start more in short cycles, right? Because you want to experiment. The world is changing faster than it used to do, so you don't have 3 years to come up with a plan. And also here, I think the combination of journeys and tiny habits, which we'll share a bit later, is super valuable to also think, okay, how can we, yes, be systemic about continuous improvement without it becoming like too theoretical and completely separated from the daily work of employees.
Yeah, yeah. Make sure it works, right?
Yeah, and making it the fact that it works is more relevant and that it works in a daily work than that it's a check in a box, nicely proven theoretical model that people are feeling, I don't know what's the value of that for me.
All right, number 4, talent shortage and retention.
Yeah, I think like all the C levels we talked about, right? Just the whole challenge around attracting talent, making sure they retain. And I think also here it's maybe not so much on the detail level, like journeys or measurements, but it's for me more on, let's say, the vision level, where I always say CX transformation is built on 3 pillars: customers, employees, and purpose. And in that specific order, because if you immediately start talking about purpose, it can come across as either, oh, we're talking about purpose because that was the new flavor of the month, if it's not authentic, right? Or it can be like, oof, that's like a huge topic, right? And if you start by understanding what do customers need, hey, they need more this human touch. Hey, that really resonates with me as an employee, gives my work more meaning, and then you have an easier bridge towards purpose.
Yeah.
So I think also there, at least the way that we look at a CX transformation is super helpful for that specific challenge, right? To really make sure that employees feel the impact they're making, so their sense of meaning enhances for sure.
Yeah. And number 5, digital and AI implementation.
Yeah, as I just mentioned, right, the COO is the one that needs to figure out how do I implement all these new gadgets and developments into my daily operations. So I think it's connected to how can I experiment quickly, as we just mentioned, in continuous improvement. But also I think for them, they should sort of, in my opinion, guard that whatever new experiment, whatever new digital tool is being tested, that you also sort of protect the employees and the customers. That's not becoming a too transactional, too digital only focused implementation, only focusing on the efficiency side. That you're always also making sure that, hey, what does it mean for the human side, right? What does it mean for the employees who are going to work with a chatbot? What does it mean for their role? Yes, it can free up time so they can have more valuable conversations. But also on the customer side, how do we make sure that if we design something like AI, that it still touches the human aspect, the need of the customer as well. Yeah. I think that's also where a CEO can add value.
Nice. All right. Then we go to the behaviors of the COO.
Yes.
And the first one is connect the dots.
Yeah, so I think CX transformation touches a lot of the challenges, right? It's a good answer to those challenges, or let's say an additional, not so much tool, but a different perspective to those challenges than maybe the regular menu that they have. And with connecting the dots, I mean, it's a bit connected to the talent and experiencing more meaning. I think a lot of employees feel like all the projects, all the initiatives that are running now in companies or in their company feel like completely separate. I don't know, like 20 things are going on. I have no idea how Project X is connected to Project Z. We tried this thing 3 years ago. Why is it different? So I think, especially on the operations side, as a leader, it's crucial to always make sure that whatever you do, you blend it into one story.
Yeah.
If you're rolling out a new CRM system, how is that connected to, let's say, the long-term goal of the organization? How is that connected? Even if it's like super operational implementation, how will it enhance the key drivers of customers? Well, if you as an employee know more that I really enjoy, I don't know, music, then you can give me more personalized experience. What does it mean for you as an employee? It means that instead of you having to check 10 different systems in your screen, you can just have one integrated view, which again saves you time, and you can add more value to the customer. So always thinking about the different stakeholders, the human aspect, but also making sure it all makes sense. It's not 10 separate projects. No, this is how they are connected. I think that's a really important behavior to continuously help employees understand the why behind the things that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode so far. Just a very, very short, tiny interruption, because if you want to learn even more about successful CX transformation, then you can now join our Accelerate and Experience Academy, where I'll teach you everything that I've learned in the past 25 years, with, of course, the scientific background, but also very practical applications, examples, tools, and exercises. So if you're curious, just go to academy.zannavandera.com and hope to see you there.
All right. The second behavior, drivers guide decisions. And then we talk about the real latent drivers, right?
Yes. So if you've been listening more often, you know that one of our, let's say, flagship convictions is the driver analysis, which just for a short explanation means, okay, there's a lot of research in CX, but let's say 95% is not actually finding what really matters to customers, or they have qualitative research, but they cannot translate it into hard steerable data, which especially for a operations officer with, a gazillion priorities, makes it really difficult to balance the, let's say, fluffy experience metrics with the hard, costs and other sales and other KPIs. So we've really been trying to make sure, okay, how can we create also hard steerable data on the experience side, so you have the same level of prioritization. So when we mean a driver analysis, we mean you literally get the insights where it says, for example, hey, enhancing personal attention gets you 5 times faster to a higher satisfaction than if you focus on, let's say, ease of doing things. That's sort of the context for a driver analysis. And then what we saw, so we started creating those driver analysis, That's where my PhD also comes from. And so originally the idea was, how can I really understand what drives customers and what drives employees? But then over the years, I also understood that, for example, for a CIO, it's super valuable as well, because then they can start prioritizing their backlog. Okay, how many of our user stories are actually connected to the drivers that have the biggest impact? We're really focusing on the transactional side and making everything easier. Shouldn't we also add things on the human aspect if that it's a driver? And it almost always is.
Yeah.
And so for the CEO, I think the interesting connection to the drivers is, of course, you need to make decisions about what's the most efficient or the most impactful innovation. And the drivers can guide you in understanding more, okay, if we need to cut costs, for example, where can we do it so the customer has the least amount of pain? I think that's one use of the drivers. But also the other way around, hey, but if we need to invest, in what topics should we invest to maximize the impact on customers, for example? And you can do the same with employees, right?
Yep.
But I think it's a really strong additional prioritization tool where you not just only focus on the transactional KPIs, but you have, let's say, the hard steerable version of also the human aspect of whatever intervention you want to do.
Yeah. If you really want to grasp this true latent drivers, we also have a podcast on that, right? So you can dive in the next podcast.
Yes, definitely.
Number 3 from the behaviors, embrace journey teams. It's a nice bridge to from the drivers to this one, right?
Yes. So indeed, so we always build a driver. Well, okay, we have 2 levels of driver analysis, mostly connected to the journey. So if I become a customer, what are the most important drivers? But also, let's say, on a relational level, and so on a company level. So what are the key drivers for me as a brand, or in the government context, what are the key drivers for me to build trust with my citizens? And when we do the drivers on a journey level, we always start with indeed mapping the journey, and both the transactional and the emotional side, because we want to really uncover from all the things that can happen in the journey, what has the biggest impact. But I think here the good news is connected to the challenge that we just mentioned about silos, different departments, is that if you start embracing journey teams and just start with one, right, pilot, experiment how it works, then you have sort of this organic way, this organic tool where you say, okay, if we want to improve this journey, well, we need somebody from financial department, we need somebody from the call center, we need somebody from digital. So you have this very organic way of saying, okay, let's create, a team of 8 to 10 people that cover all these elements of the journey, and then you're automatically thinking and working together cross silos.
Yep.
I think that's really sort of an underestimated strength. I'm never a fan of, let's say, okay, we need to restructure fully the organization around journeys, because let's say the hierarchy, in my opinion, well, it's not that it completely doesn't matter, but if you work in a company where nobody's willing to cooperate, then no matter how you structure it, they will not cooperate.
Yeah.
And if they are willing to cooperate, then it doesn't really matter, that I'm in the marketing department. I'm super willing to work with my colleague in customer service. So I think that's a really nice addition. And we have one example, was a couple of years ago, I was working with a Dutch insurance company. And the reason for diving into the journey was to prevent this unnecessary contact. And as I mentioned, right, the contact center is never the one causing the calls, right? That's always coming from another department, except for the repeat calls. And then we were figuring out, okay, we got a lot of calls around, questions around when they changed the policy or when they ended the insurance policy. And then what we started doing, we literally started collecting 100 cases, individual cases. So luckily we had a trainee who was willing to do that research. But the interesting thing is what he uncovered is that in 80% of those cases, the back office sent a letter. Okay, so you're changing your policy. That means that, you get back like €3. And then the financial department was actually collecting or you could also get a refund, right? Or refunding the amount. And in 80% of the cases, the amount in the letter was not exactly the same as what was added or deducted from your bank account. Right, and it was sometimes just like maybe 10 cents or 50 cents difference, right? So it was not a lot, but you're wondering like, okay, but why is this different?
Yeah.
And it was not that they were doing anything illegal. There were just some calculations going on between those moments, between the back office letter and the finance department. But the point that I'm trying to make is that if you would just have looked at each department separately, you would have checked the letter from the back office. This letter looks fine. You did not find anything. If you would have separately looked at finance, okay, yes, they're collecting money as they should. So only by looking at it from a journey perspective, you start to match this letter with what the other department is doing, and then you discover, okay, this is not the same. Yeah. So for me, that's always a super clear example of the power of looking at things and analyzing from a journey perspective.
And next to that, it's also much easier to start with a pilot journey team than restructure the whole organization, right?
Definitely. Yeah. First play around, see if it adds value, learn from it. Then the second journey team will already be better than the first journey team, right? So just sort of figure it out along the way.
Yeah.
And what I also liked was a very nice addition with one of the recent clients we work with, where we not only said, let's start journey teams, but let's also start with channel teams. So with the channel team, I mean, how can we improve the experience when I call the organization? Or how can we improve the experience of going to the shops? So literally managing the channels. And often what you see is that companies then only have a quality team in the call center working on it. Or a quality team in the shop. So again, looking at it from their silo. And there we also created channel teams covering different departments of the organization. And that was also for us unexpected, more positive than we thought. So it had the same positive impact as working with journey teams. So I think that's also an interesting perspective to add when you're thinking about, hey, how can we create cross-functional teams and not just make it journey teams?
Yeah, for sure. All right. Number 4, embrace tiny habits.
Yes, so you are in the challenge of, okay, all these things that we've been creating, all these innovations, all those AI things, whatever, right? Whatever new thing you want to introduce, it can be super challenging. Whether it's a new culture, you have maybe new brand values, you want to be more digital, maybe you have like super high workload challenges. So I think one of the things that we discovered when working with Tiny Habits, because we mostly use it to enhance the impact on the customer, right? Let's say if personal attention is a key driver, then we design Tiny Habits for call center agents, for account manager. How can I give more personal attention in my daily work? But we also discovered that just the way to use Tiny Habits, how we design it, is super universal. So whether it's new brand values and you want to make sure that employees in their daily work understand, okay, how can these brand values literally be useful in my daily work? We've also experimented with high perception of workload. So I think the whole idea around Tiny Habits is a really powerful tool for you as a chief operations officer to just have a energizing, fun, very practical way of implementing new interventions, technologies, new ways of working, to make it less abstract, right? I think maybe the strategy that's designed is still super high level, but then you need to figure out, okay, but how do I translate it into my daily operation? And I think the combination of Tiny Habits is really powerful because then you are forced to translate those elements of transformation into the daily work of your employees.
Yeah.
And then analyze the daily journey. So the journey of the account manager is a bit different than the one of the call center, and is also different from employees that are non-customer facing. Or we also created a menu for habits for team leaders and managers. So I think just the methodology behind Tiny Habits, I think, is a super powerful tool for any change, any intervention you want to do in your organization.
Yeah. And also this one, you can start with a small pilot, right? And see what works and then roll it out in the rest of the organization.
Yeah, definitely. So we've piloted with a team of 50 people, and we've also ran it with, like 3, 4, 500 employees. So yeah, it's also super scalable. That's also what I really like. Let's say the disruption is low, so it's not like a gazillion workshops costing a lot of time. So it's super efficient in time, but the impact is really high.
Yeah, nice. All right. Last one, number 5, and it's the same for all C-levels, right? Lead by example.
Definitely, right? I think embrace the responsibility, right? If you are thinking about, okay, we need to become more customer-centric, then I think also you really need to understand what's my role in it. How can I facilitate it? And it's a few things. So yes, it's partly generic, and the generic part is, hey, if you're working with a C-level team, make sure you challenge each other, right? So what are behaviors that we feel are supporting, but also be vulnerable and say, hey, last month I was willing to experiment with, I don't know, tiny habit X, but, daily operation, the stress took over and I just was not able to do it. It's also a learning journey, right? For all of you together as a team. But I think some tangible tips is also here connected to sharing an integrated story. I think it's really important to always, when you take decisions, that in the communication about the decision, you always explain how you balance your decision. And with balance, I mean not just what was the financial reasoning, what was the efficiency reasoning, but also, hey, looking at customers, employees, and purpose. How did the decision fit into those 3 categories? So it could be negative, could be positive, right? But at least be transparent in showing, hey, we took it into consideration and the impact of this idea is X on the customers, and we accept if it's negative, for example, or we're mitigating it in such a way to minimize the impact on customers. Hey, this is how it's connected to purpose, or right now maybe it's not so much connected to purpose. We understand how you feel, but I know it's crisis for the next 6 months. We just need to, intervene XYZ. So it's not that you're saying that everything is always super humanly focused, but just be transparent in that you consciously and explicitly took the perspectives into account, and it can explain the impact also on the 3 pillars. I think that's really important. And some of the tips that we always share is looking at your tiny habits. Just go around, ask your employee, hey, last week, when did you feel that you really made an impact on the customer? Or if there's one thing that I can do to remove barriers to give a better customer experience, what can I do? Or if there's one thing where you feel that would really level up my employee experience, what would it be? Right? And then in your monthly address, maybe you have a monthly video or monthly stand-up, I don't know. Next to the financials, next to the operations, always share an impactful story on the customer or an impactful story from an employee.
Yeah.
I think maybe just consciously design the human aspect in everything you're doing.
Yeah. And also design it in existing communication, right? Not make it a separate thing, but...
Definitely, yeah. To really get it in the DNA, make sure I just make a list of what meetings do I have, what, newsletters, updates do we have, what reporting do we have, and see, okay, can we add it instead of indeed having a completely separate CX stream with separate reporting, separate communication. Yeah, definitely make sure that you integrate it well.
Nice. All right. Anything you want to say to wrap it up?
No, I thought when I just popped in my head that consciously designed for the human aspect, I found that a really nice summarizing sentence. I should make a mental note and maybe write that one down somewhere.
All right. Thank you so much.
You too.
And see you next time.
See you. Ciao.